We plan to have Camp Morgan set up until the search is done.
Tonight, a compromise reopens parts of the Winnipeg landfill suspected to hold bodies of murdered women.
It's nothing to panic about, but we did want to make people aware that COVID is still out there.
Plus, a surge in COVID-19 cases closes the Iqaluit hospital to visitors.
Now the water's already changing.
And a land-based education program empowers Indigenous children to learn more about science. Good evening, Tansei Anine. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. The Brady landfill near Winnipeg is now open after operations were halted mid-December when demonstrators blocked the entrance, calling for police to conduct a search for the remains of 3 Indigenous women killed by an alleged serial killer. In a release, the city states a compromise with demonstrators was reached, allowing them to peacefully protest while the Brady landfill reopens to the public. The facility is where Winnipeg police found partial remains of Rebecca Contois in June. Police said they believe the bodies of Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, and Buffalo Woman could be in the Prairie Green landfill near Winnipeg, but MMIW advocates want both sites to be searched. Morgan's daughter, Cambria Harris, says her family and its supporters have not agreed to the opening of the landfill.
We beg and we beg and we beg for these changes and for these implementations to ensure that something like this does not happen. And the message you are sending by reopening the landfill is telling people that, you know, it's okay to do that. It's okay to continue dumping women in the landfill. And it's unfortunate because all these people that are going to have to go to the dump are going to have to see all these red dresses, all the names. They're going to have to see the camp. They're going to have to see the warriors. And we're going to let you know exactly what kind of atrocities have gone on here. We plan to have Camp Morgan set up until the search is done, and we're not going anywhere.
Sentencing for one of the 2 men convicted of killing 2 Métis hunters in March of 2020 began today in Edmonton. The lawyer representing Anthony Bilodeau says his client was just defending himself and his family. A judge sentenced Bilodeau to life in prison with no chance of parole for 13 years. The Crown was asking for him to serve 15 years before he can apply for parole. Maurice Cardinal and his nephew Jacob Sansom were out moose hunting near Glendon, Alberta, where they were shot by Bilodeau and his father, Roger, and left on the side of the road. His father, Roger Bilodeau, was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 10 years in prison last August. And our web reporter Danielle Parody is keeping an eye on this story, and we'll have more on the sentencing announcement on our website. You can go to aptnnews.ca for that. A fatality inquiry report into the death of a 4-year-old girl was released this week. Serenity died of a massive head injury in 2014 while in kinship care in Alberta. The report states Child Services should not have taken her away from her mother. APTN's Chris Stewart has more.
Serenity was just 4 years old when she lost her life. Reports show she was sent to hospital after she fell from a swing. She arrived with a massive brain injury and was very malnourished. A doctor's report from the inquiry says she weighed only 18 pounds. She had been in kinship pair with her 2 siblings after being taken from her mother. Charges were filed against her caretakers for failure to provide the necessities of life, but those charges were later stayed. A fatality inquiry conducted by Judge Renee Cochard and released by the Alberta government states that Children's Services have spent thousands of dollars keeping these children away from their mother. They have spent resources on foster care, drivers, support workers for foster parents, special investigators, and the whole administrative machine of Children's Services. Had this money been spent on providing services to redacted, such as child care support, a home, proper financial help so that she did not have to live in a basement, and educational support, the inquiry's view is that the end result would have been much different. APTN spoke to Serenity's mother, who now lives in British Columbia, on the report. We are not showing her identity.
I agree. If there was the proper support, I think that things could have been handled way different. I do agree that they did spend a lot of money trying to keep my kids from me when I was putting forth a big effort to get them back, but still not being able to have my children. Yeah, like the support was at an all-time low.
In a statement, the Alberta Minister of Children's Services Office wrote that although we cannot undo what has been done, we will continue to make and support improvements going forward, including reviewing the Fatality Inquiry Judge's recommendations with all the seriousness this death deserves. The report makes 20 recommendations to help prevent more tragedies in the future, including ensuring Indigenous mothers receive the proper supports they need to raise their children in a healthy environment, and making legal aid available as soon as a child is removed from the family.
They're great recommendations, but to see that there has been no justice for my children or Serenity, I don't believe that the system has changed yet, and it's going to take a lot to change it, because I believe it's still very broken.
Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
We want to hear what you think about the inquiry report and other stories you've seen on our show so far tonight. Here's how to continue the conversation. Send your emails to news@aptn.ca or leave a comment on aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. You can follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. Well, nowadays it's rare to be in a place without the possibility of connecting to a cellular or internet network. For Wemotaci First Nation in Quebec, it wasn't until 2020 that they were connected by fiber optic wire. Having high-speed internet has been a game changer for the remote Atikamekw community. Now the final frontier is cellular service. A story by Shushan Becon, translated by Tom Fenario.
Texting. It's such a banal part of life that most don't even think twice about it. But here, in Wemotaci First Nation, it's not within everyone's reach. All cellular calls or messaging need to be done via Wi-Fi. Even that is relatively new.
C'est géré par la communauté pour des personnes de la communauté. Fait que je pense que c'est vraiment un bon potentiel, ça matche bien.
In this Atikamekw community, located about 400 kilometers north of Montreal, internet service has been provided in the last 2 years by the community's own telecommunications service. General Manager Nikki Petitquet of Wemotaci Telecommunications Service explains.
Fait que dans le fond, ici, c'est vraiment le cas du réseau, finalement. Tous les clients, dans le fond, sont regroupés dans deux housings. On a, dans le fond, un autre housing que genre... Si on compare, une fibre équivaut à peu près à 32 clients. OK? Fait que si on compte le nombre de fibres, c'est le nombre de clients qu'on a actuellement.
In telecommunications, customers are counted in the numbers of doors, or houses that need internet. Wemotaci has 360 doors. But at this time, Wemotaci Telecommunication Services only provides internet to 340 doors. Still, Petitquet is proud to say that his company now offers 300 megabytes per second to all its customers, about 10 times faster than what they used to offer. And they also offer services that other non-Indigenous businesses cannot, such as having support and installation in the Atikamekw language.
T'sais, les installateurs, c'est pas des allochtones qui débarquent dans la maison puis qui viennent faire l'installation nécessairement. C'est vraiment un autochtone. Fait que s'il y a une barrière de langue, mais la barrière elle vient d'être comblée avec un autochtone qui réside dans la réserve.
In 2022, the federal government gave Bell Canada funding of just over $400,000 to enhance the cellular network in Wemotaci. Petitquet says most are excited, although the process has been a little muddy.
À part être consulté au départ, puis juste faire l'annonce sans nécessairement prévenir la communauté, c'est peut-être plus ça qui nous a un peu déplu.
Bell Canada declined APTN's request for an interview. In an email, a spokesperson affirms that the work to provide the community with a mobile network is progressing well, and that it involves several steps to be carried out with the partners in this file. According to Petitquet, cellular network service is expected in fall 2023. With a little luck by then, he'll be able to send his texts without Wi-Fi. A story by Shushan Becon, APTN National News, Wemotaci First Nation, Quebec.
Nunavut health officials are reporting what they call a surge in COVID cases on Baffin Island, and specifically in Iqaluit. The hospital in Iqaluit is now closed to most visitors as a response to the jump in cases. Just how big a jump? Well, that's hard to tell since Nunavut no longer publicly reports COVID case numbers. According to the chief public health officer, this is what goes into determining a surge in cases.
What that really means is that in a short space of time, we have seen either lab data or clinical cases increase. And that's all it means. It's nothing to panic about, but we did want to make people aware that COVID is still out there.
Two BC organizations that provide legal aid and determine human rights violations are receiving more funding from the province. The money gives more access to individuals seeking justice and seeking legal help. The BC government announced an extra $4.5 million of funding per year for the BC Human Rights Tribunal and the Community Legal Assistance Society. Last year, the BC Human Rights Tribunal heard 3,200 cases. The Community Legal Assistance Society provides legal support for the disadvantaged. Funding will allow the hiring of more staff and additional discrimination cases to be heard in BC. All right, we have to step aside for a short break, but when we come back, we'll speak with Justice Gerald Morin about being named to the Order of Canada. Welcome back to APTN National News. Governor General Mary Simon announced the latest batch of Order of Canada recipients last month. Amongst them is retired Saskatchewan Justice Gerald Morin. He comes with a long list of achievements. The member of the Peter Ballantine Cree Nation is the first Cree-speaking judge in the province. He also helped establish the Cree Court Circuit in Saskatchewan. Justice Morin joins us today from his home in Saskatchewan. Justice Morin, thank you so much for joining us today, and congratulations. You have now been made an officer of the Order of Canada. What is it like to be recognized for your achievements in this way?
Well, I think, first of all, one has to realize these type of journeys are not traveled alone. I have many to thank in relation to that, from my parents all the way to my co-workers, and especially my clerks, I would think, because those are people that I worked with every day for the 18 years that I was on that Cree Court.
Now, you are well known for working to ensure the equal treatment of Indigenous people in the justice system. Also, why in particular did you choose to focus on the area of language?
Well, I think I noticed right from the start, from years ago, I was involved as a probation officer from back in 1973. And in those times, right up to the times I practiced law starting in 1987, I noticed that certainly language was a major problem in relation to people being able to articulate what they understood, what they needed to know, and to be able to tell the court in certain situations what the court needed to find out. So those are things I noticed right from that start. And so having this opportunity to use the Cree language, it is also, I think, I've often said, if you talk to a person in a language they understand, they can hear you. If you talk to them in their own language, you reach their heart. And I think that's a very important thing, because it is an open thing to understanding what our culture is and what life is like out there.
Well, that's certainly well said, and Indigenous people have often struggled to get proper representation within the justice system. Do you see things substantially changing for the better in recent years?
Certainly, I've seen many people make an effort in relation to that. It is still always one situation where are we really dealing with things in a proper manner, and whether or not we always resort to criminal law. And it should be the one of the last resort. I think if we can try and restore people back to where they are and restore relationships, then restorative justice might be a better way as opposed to criminal law. So those are things I still think that need to be looked at fairly closely and continue exploring that and using that in the justice system.
Now, you retired from the bench in 2019. Are there any projects you've been working on that you'd like to tell us about?
Well, I think that I still sit as a judge on an itinerant basis, meaning when I'm on call, if they want some replacement either in Saskatchewan, or I also go to Northwest Territories and the Yukon. And so I've involved myself there. I've involved myself in CBA activities. I've involved myself in terms of dealing with young Indigenous lawyers, in some respects other Indigenous judges, other judges, to have some input into questions they have in relation to certain situations they see. And certainly with young Indigenous lawyers, it's been a real pleasure to try and help them along their way in dealing with issues that come up in their practice and whatnot. So I've been busy.
Well, busy indeed, Justice Morin. Thank you so much for joining us today. And again, congratulations.
Yeah, excellent.
All right, we have to step aside one final time. Still ahead, one land-based education project in Manitoba is empowering Indigenous children to get more involved.
Kind of heartbreaking when you go to communities that are impacted by hydro, or they're impacted by all sorts of other resource extractions like mining.
Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Riley Primo captured this photo of the sun shining between the clouds on a beautiful day in Muskeg Lake, Saskatchewan. That's a great photo there, Riley. Thank you so much for sharing. If you have a great photo you would like to share, you can send it to us by emailing share@aptn.ca for the chance to be featured as our next photo of the day. All right, and now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. We begin on the East Coast, -1 in St. John's and 0 in Halifax. -8 in Cartwright and -15 in Happy Valley Goose Bay. -1 in Quebec City and 0 in Montreal. 2 degrees in Toronto and -10 in North Bay. -13 with some snow in Timmins and -7 with some snow in Big Trout Lake. Snow and -9 in Churchill and -8 in Puckatawagan. -7 in Barons River and -6 in Winnipeg. Clear and 1 degree in Swift Current and -5 in Saskatoon. -3 in Buffalo Narrows and -11 in Uranium City. As we make our way west, it's -9 in Fort Chipewyan and -11 in Peace River. -1 in Edmonton and 2 degrees in Calgary. 6 degrees in Vancouver and 6 in Campbell River. 7 degrees in Sandspit and 0 in Prince George. Some snow and -21 in Beaver Creek and snow and -13 in Rock River. Snow and -21 in Norman Wells and -18 in Fort Simpson. Snow and -18 in Inuvik and -14 in Colville Lake. -33 with snow in Cambridge Bay and -21 in Chesterfield. -27 in Resolute and -23 in Kingite. The world's biggest showcase for the latest high-tech gadgets is getting underway in Las Vegas.
This is the World Cup of innovation, but it's where the world gathers for those at the CXO level focusing on innovation.
The 2023 Consumer Electronics Show has more than 3,000 exhibitors featuring innovative gadgets like electric rollerblades and a voice-controlled toy dog. Organizers hope to attract 100,000 people between today and Sunday. Last year's show was scaled down because of COVID-19. Indigenous peoples are underrepresented in the sciences, which makes it difficult for our perspectives on the environment to be heard. As land-based learning initiatives become more popular, one project is empowering Indigenous children to get more involved. Sab Jonesa has more with this story.
Now the water's already changing.
Just like magic, Ashley Wolf is teaching kids how to test their own water. But it's not all fun and games.
It's color-coded, so that way they can see where their water is and where it comes on the scale.
These are skills they can use to protect their environment.
And it's kind of heartbreaking when you go to communities that are impacted by hydro, or they're impacted by all sorts of other resource extractions like mining, and you see the effect that's happening in their communities, and you see these kids that want to do something, but they don't know where to start.
Ashley Wolf, whose family comes from Peguis First Nation just north of Winnipeg and is finishing her major in Indigenous studies, has been out on the land since she was a child. Now, she's the acting coordinator for Kiskinamakwan, a land-based education program at the University of Manitoba that puts the needs of vulnerable communities first.
When communities are going out and doing their own work because corporations don't want to go and do it, they have to take it into their own hands. So that's how I can start getting involved, and then that way kids can and communities can actually start doing the data themselves.
To combat the underrepresentation of Indigenous people in the sciences, Kiskinamakwan's goal is to start young and pique the curiosity of Indigenous children.
Through decolonizing education, we're able to get land-based learning and get kids out into the bush, get them out actually doing cultural teachings and incorporating science teachings along with it too, so that way our Indigenous youth can see that you don't need to be a scientist to be able to test your water. You don't need to have a degree to be able to see if your water's healthy. It's something that we're trying to make relatable for Indigenous youth, so that way we have more representation in the science programs, so that way we can bring that back to community.
Wolf says teaching the children about their local environments strengthens their ties to their land and identity.
I think it's a big thing that we're trying to instill in our own generation of kids is we want you to know where your food comes from. We want to know where you come from. We want you to know that it is okay to be yourself, and you are Indigenous, and that is an okay thing to be. You can be proud of that.
Sab Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Well, Team Canada struck gold at the World Juniors for the second year in a row, beating Czechia 3-2 in breathtaking fashion.
He's got Wall with it. Joshua Wall walks in, goes to the chin, he's Dylan Gunther! Goal in Halifax!
Dylan Gunther is the overtime hero, scoring the winner just over 6 minutes into overtime. The Canadians started the game strong, entering the third period with a 2-0 lead. The Czechs then scored 2 quick goals to tie it up. Canada prevailed, clinching their 20th World Junior title. The win is extra special for tournament MVP Connor Bedard.
We're not talking about me. We just won the biggest tournament in the world. And man, I love this group. I love this country. And this team, or this city right here has been unbelievable.
The 17-year-old phenom set 3 different Canadian World Junior records, including most points all time with 36 and most goals all time with 17. Canada is the first repeat winner of the World Juniors since 2009. All right, that is all we have for you tonight on APTN National News. You can check out our website, aptnnews.ca, for more details on any of our stories tonight. I'm Daryl Stranger. Thank you so much for joining us. Chimigwich, and have a great night.